Hi, this is Simon Bown. For years I've explored the mysteries of near-death experiences, reincarnation and life beyond this one. Now I've gathered some of the most compelling cases into my new book, Verified Near-Death Experiences, Proof of an Afterlife. This book features 30 extraordinary near-death experiences, each one backed by verifiable details that defy explanation. These are more than just personal stories. They offer real evidence that consciousness continues beyond death. Through these accounts, you'll hear about profound moments of connection, insights from beyond, and experiences that challenge everything we think we know about life and the afterlife. Verified Near-Death Experiences, Proof of an Afterlife, will be published on March 24th, and the Kindle version is now available for pre-order. Welcome to our Paranormal Afterlife. This is an Our Paranormal Afterlife extra episode, and I'm your host Simon Bown. In this episode I'm talking to Landon Dennis about his near-death experience. Hi Landon, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Simon. I really appreciate you inviting me on your podcast.
Well, we're going to talk about your near-death experience, but before you do that, did you want to do something for us?
Yes, Simon, I would like to say a prayer, and this is not to boast to people that I, show off to people about prayer. It's very significant to me. And so if you wouldn't mind, I would like to say a prayer before we start. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for letting me be on Simon's podcast today. Thank you for giving me a way to share my experience and the message of hope and love that I have for others. And thank you for all of our blessings in these hard times that all of us are going through in these days. And thank you for all that we have. And please help me to share my experience the best way that I can to help anybody who hears this to hear the sincerity of what I say and to give people hope to see their loved ones again. Heavenly Father, thank you for all that we have. And I say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Sorry, Simon.
Okay.
I get teared up a little bit sometimes when I when I pray, which is a good thing.
Can I ask you, what was your life like before the near-death experience?
So my life, right before the near-death experience, which is what made this experience happen, is I was a very active IV drug user. Heroin, anything you threw at me, I would take and I would use it. So I was a very bad drug user. I was still a very loving and kind person. It's hard to say when it's so contradictory that how can you be a loving, kind person and also have all these issues with drugs and stuff? And that was going through my head a lot. But I was an active drug user. I left my house and rode my little Vespa down the road to pick up drugs. And while I was there, I overdosed, I guess, that I was told, and they Narcaned me. I remember going to the house and getting ready to do the drugs, and that's the last thing I remember until getting put in an ambulance. But what happened is I overdosed there. They Narcaned me. I guess I came back and I got on my little Vespa and just went to go ride down the street again, and I got hit by a car. I got up, and luckily, I was close enough to home that I guess I just got up and split the scene again and drove home. There was blood all over my Vespa, but as soon as I got home, I guess I went into the bathroom up on the counter, and like I said, I don't remember any of this, so it's going to be what people told me in between that first overdose and when my near-death experience, when I saw my body. But I got on the counter and I did more drugs, and I'm guessing I shot up in my neck like I would do. I'm sorry to get graphic, but that's the type of life I was living at that time. And when I So when I overdosed the first time, within 10 minutes, got hit by a car. With probably another 10 minutes, got up on a counter and overdosed. And I fell back and hit my head really hard again on a tile floor. And it's a high counter. And my wife came looking for me, and she found me on the bathroom floor with just blood gushing out from my head everywhere. And I'd fallen backwards off the counter straight to my head. So she called the ambulance and the paramedics, and they came. They saw how bad the situation was. My head, I mean, it was pretty messed up. I wish I could show you the pictures that you've seen of my head, so your people could see really how bad it was. But the paramedics came and they put me in the ambulance, and this is when I come back to the story, I guess you would say, because like I said before, it was at first I did the drugs down the street, and the next thing I remember is being above this ambulance. And this ambulance is moving. It's hauling butt down the road to get me to the emergency room, but I'm above it and I can see through it. Like, it's transparent. And it's still to this day, it's hard for me to describe, but I could see through it. I saw all the people around me. One person was drilling. The more I've looked into it, because I saw it at the time, they had to use this like drill needle to go into my knee to get a vein. And I was watching all this while the ambulance is moving and I'm above it, but I didn't have the feeling like I was like flying down the road above the ambulance. I just knew the ambulance was moving, and I was looking at my body, having these paramedics work on them. And it was so confusing to me at first, and it was terrifying. The way, actually, someone the other day, my sister-in-law brought it up, that if you've ever had like sleep paralysis type thing, that feeling you get in sleep paralysis where you're just like, what's going on? I'm terrified. I don't know how to explain it, but above that ambulance washing my body, I was terrified. I was sad. I just had so many horrible feelings while watching them work on me above this. And it got to the point where I almost couldn't take it. It's really hard for me to put into words, but it was a very scary place wherever I was, not in my body, but above that ambulance. And as that's happening, just boom, instantly, no tunnels, no white lights, nothing, just instantly I'm that's gone. And I'm standing in this grass field. I'm sitting there kind of like, I don't know how to explain the feelings that I had, but going from above that ambulance, feeling so horrible and terrified, to all of a sudden be in this big grass field where the grass loved me. And I can tell you, the grass loved me. It doesn't make sense to some people, but the grass loved me. Each individual blade of grass loved me. And I remember just kind of looking out over that big grass field and seeing each individual blade of grass, and just was comforting me. And there was this big hill in the back, I would say about a quarter mile away, if I had to guess. And behind that hill were these beautiful, beautiful lights that were coming up, different colors, as if someone was shining a big spotlight up into the air. But if you were to put like a crystal on that spotlight, the refractions of the rainbow colors that you see, like kind of come if you shine a light in a crystal type thing, or a diamond, that type of light, it was almost like that. And as I'm sitting there looking at it, I could feel my grandpa. And my grandpa passed away back in the early 2000s. And I what's crazy is I actually had an experience with him years and years ago when I was a child. After he passed away, that I had a dream that he came and visited me. and he was like this reddish light, and that's so cool that I could see that there was a light and feel that it was my grandpa sending me love. And there were so many different colors. It's hard to explain, but this purplish one was my niece who passed away in a car accident many years ago when she was about 16. And I could see her light, and I could feel her sending me love too. And I also had, back when I was very young, the day that she passed away, she visited me in a dream. And what's cool about that is those are the two lights that I guess you would say I could discern at that time. I knew they were sending me love, and I knew they were my family members, and they were like, they were so happy, and they were sending me love, but I could only see them as lights behind this hill. And I wanted to go back behind that hill because I could feel them. And then I felt a woman's presence, just a little bit behind me to my right. And so I turned, and there was just this beautiful, beautiful young lady that was looking at me. It's, how do I describe it? She brought me so much peace, even on top of that grass being there and showing me love. This lady just smiling at me as I turned just conveyed so much love and acceptance and a peace and no judgment. I guess is a big one. It's no judgment, because I was living my life not in a good way at the time when this near-death experience happened. And she just started speaking with me, but not through words. It was 100% what people call telepathy or telepathically. But it was way more than that. It was through emotions, feelings, and experiences, almost as if like when she would talk to me, she would convey almost her experiences with each word. And the way I kind of describe that is, if someone was to say the word fire to you, all of a sudden you would see the glow of the fire. You would feel the warmth of it. You would hear the crackling of the wood, and you would smell it. Just with that one word, all those senses would just boom instantly to you. And so she started, I'll say speaking because it's easier that way, but yeah, she was speaking with me that way. And I wanted to go behind that hill because I felt my loved ones there. And she told me a lot of very personal things that I won't ever share on podcasts. And the more podcasts I do, I share a little bit more each time. That's why I pray at first to my story will never change about the truth of my story, but sometimes I feel more compelled to share a little bit more of my experience. And so as I'm talking to you, that if I feel compelled to share something, I'm sorry if I get off track and stuff, but that's what I'm going to do. What I believe is that I'm going to let the Spirit guide me on this. And so she was conveying to me why I couldn't go behind the hill, just conveying to me so much love and so much, I felt so much gratitude and non-judgment. And as she's speaking with me, I feel this other presence. And so I turn, and like I said, I didn't see them at first. I felt them. So when I felt the lady, I turn, and she starts conveying stuff to me. And I felt this man, and just a handsome young man. And both these people look like they're in their late 20s, early 30s. I don't know, but he started speaking with me also. And it was so amazing to have I guess you would say a conversation, but through emotions and not just words, because it's so easy to mix up words, or nowadays people text, they have to send emojis almost to clarify what they're saying. 'Cause you can take words any way you want. Someone could say something and you could take it as a good thing, or you could take it as a bad thing, depending on what day, how you're feeling that day. But they were conveying these emotions and love and experiences to me, and there's no need for words. And it kind of sucks to try to describe that. I'll say back on earth here, because where I was, I was not judged for doing drugs. I was not condemned for the lifestyle that I was living. They conveyed to me important things that I needed to change in my life to be happy, but they were not judging me. They were just loving me and conveying these things. I'm sorry, I get emotional still when I talk about it. This happened almost 2 years ago, but it's so they're just speaking with me, and it was so wonderful how I felt. And the things that they were saying to me, they were sharing with me about how powerful prayer is. And I will, to anybody I ever talk to, I'm sorry if you get annoyed by me telling you the power of prayer, but it is real. And they showed that to me. They showed me times in my life, because as they're talking to me, I still question things because of the life that I had lived. They're telling me about the power of prayer and how our loved ones are always able to be there to help, and God is always there and always willing to help us. But we just need to ask, because we have agency on this earth. We have our free agency to choose what's going to make us happy or what's going to make us sad. And they were showing me times in my life that I was having just horrible times. And the one that I share is when I was homeless, a homeless drug addict up in Layton, Utah. Holding signs for money, and some nights I would go back behind this Little Caesars pizza place, because they would throw some of the pizza stuff out in the dumpsters at night. And so if I was the first one there before the animals or anything else, I could get a little bit to eat. And I remember this one specific night that I went to go grab this piece of pizza that it looked so gross, and there are like some bite marks out of it, but I was so hungry. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, Landon, this is your last night on earth, because I was having such a hard time in life. And I was looking at it. I chose drugs over everything else. I lost, in this moment, this is what I'm thinking about while holding this piece of pizza, is that you lost your first fiance and your daughter due to drugs. I still haven't been able to connect with my daughter because of my past drug use, and so that in that moment, I remember just thinking, what's your worth? What is your worth in this world? If this is the most you can do and get out of it, is be homeless, hold a sign begging for money, and go eat out of a dumpster. I've been in some really low points in my life, and they how do I explain it? They showed me this moment for a second, but it was like I was there again, and I felt that pain for just a second. And they started conveying to me the power of prayer, because I was kind of questioning, what do you mean the power of prayer? Look at all these times that I had these horrible experiences in life, and I never saw any good thing come from prayer at that time. That's what was going through my mind. And that's when they showed me this moment with this pizza, and I saw these lights, just like those lights that were behind that hill. I saw them come to me in that moment. And I saw these dark, wispy things flee away. Whatever people want to call those, I saw them flee away. and then they started conveying to me, because the emotion of how hurtful that was in the moment went away, and they started conveying to me, like, do you not see how loved you are? Do you not see how many angels and loved ones are here to help you anytime you need it, even when, especially when you struggle? But they were showing me, like, in these times, like, your prayers have always been heard, but maybe the answer wasn't exactly how you were looking for it, type thing. And so they put me in my place real quick, almost questioning that, and seeing that moment and seeing that, to where on that night I would have committed suicide had those prayers not come. And so they showed me that moment. They expressed to me, do you not see how loved you are? How many loved ones are always around you, past and future? And that might be hard for some people to believe, but when I say these past loved ones and future loved ones, when I met those two people that were there, I really wish to this day that I would have asked who they were, because I know I'm related to them, the two people that met me up in that place that I was at. But I never asked, but I know I was related to them, and I don't know if they were past ancestors, or maybe maybe a future, like the girl. I've thought about it. Maybe it was my future daughter. I'm not totally sure. So when I share all this, there are some things that I have a firm and true belief in, and then there's other things that when I share these things, I'm also questioning, like, how it's a pretty crazy experience. And so I don't share these things in a way that I'm telling people what to believe or how it works. I'm just sharing that this is the experience I had. And so they were showing me these things, and I knew I was related to them. I don't know how, but they were just showing me, like, look at the power of prayer, Landon. Look how many loved ones have always been around you, and how many angels, whatever you want to call it, spirit guides, angels, whatever people have come up names for them. I was shown and told just how powerful prayer is to bring hope into your life. I don't know how to express it, because I was about to commit suicide that night, and they showed me that moment for a certain reason, and that reason was to show me the power of prayer. And that's why I share that with anybody I meet, because that prayer saved my life. And it wasn't necessarily even my prayer that saved my life. Those prayers that came to me in that moment, I believe those were my parents' prayers and other loved ones' prayers, because they were terrified of the life I was living at the time. Homeless, drug addict, just doing anything to get by. And so those prayers and those moments, my family may not have seen, like, the fruit of their labor, the end result of their prayers. And to them, they might have thought, well, I prayed right now, but he's still, God didn't answer my prayers. He's still homeless. He's still out there running and gunning. But I tell you, no, those prayers, whether those people saw how they saw the efforts of their prayers or not, they were real, and it affected me in that moment. And I saw those prayers as these beams of light almost. And I try to tell people, because a lot of people will say, well, I prayed and this happened. Well, I prayed and this still happened in my life. And prayer is such a powerful connection with our Creator and loved ones. And you can ask very specific things in prayers and not see, very specific things happen. And so you think that, no, prayer doesn't work. But no, I tell you, I saw it. And those prayers that came to me, those people that said them did not see that it saved my life, but it did. And so I share about the power of prayer. They were also sharing with me, and I try not to get into like religious stuff too much in this, but my religion does have a big effect on how I viewed this situation after, but I felt my family up there. And so I know families can be together forever. And for the people who don't know if there's life after death, or the atheists, or I feel bad for them because they don't have that peace and comfort of knowing that there is a creator that loves us individually, not just as, I mean, I'm not talking, he just doesn't love the world. No, he loves you and the world, but he knows you specifically. And those prayers I saw were specifically allowed to come to me from my loved ones at that time. And I some of them might have been from my loved ones on the other side. I don't know. But as they're sharing with me all these things, and I see those lights behind the hill, they're sharing with me that I can't go back there yet, but they were allowed to come to where I was. And when I say that, it's hard to explain because I don't know necessarily where that was, but those two were allowed to come comfort me. My loved ones that had passed away were still, I felt them. They were there. They were happy. They loved me wherever there is behind that hill, and wherever the two that were allowed to come talk to me. I don't know what those exact places are. I call them realms, I guess is my best word for it. The realm where I was above my body, that was horrible. When I was looking at my body and watching the ambulance work on me, it was horrible. And then the realm where the grass loved me was wonderful. And then wherever those lights were, I could feel the love coming from there and no judgment, but I wasn't allowed to go back there. So as I'm speaking with these two, the biggest question I had was kind of about the prayer thing. And that's why they showed me an all immersive moment in my life where other people's prayers did save my life. Whatever those dark things that were around me behind that dumpster as I was thinking of suicide, fled. They just fled from prayers from others that never saw the fruits of their labors. Okay, so I'm speaking with these two, or I say speaking, but you know what I said, it's all immersive. Before I leave this place, I get this big wave of just, I love you. I don't know how to describe it other than if you were to just do a cannonball into a pool or something, and instantly all the water just boom, it just envelops you. That's kind of what it felt like, but it was emotions and love. So imagine doing a cannonball into a pool of love. I guess is the best way to describe it. And it was so cool, Simon. Like, I've never really researched into like near death experiences and all this stuff before. I've heard a few like stories here and there, but I'm so grateful to have had this experience, because when I felt that final wave of love, it wasn't like there was no goodbyes. It was a wave of love of, I will see you again. And almost like, it's so hard for me to put into words that, these emotions that came to me, but we will see you again and continue to do your best on this earth, I guess is the best way I can describe it. To know that I'm living on this earth with my loved ones still around me, always available and willing to help if I'm just willing to ask and pray. And that's such a wonderful thing, I believe, for people these days, to know that if you were missing a loved one, a mother, a child, a father, sister, brother, anybody, they are not just gone. Like, you are not just your body here on earth. your body is special, and it was created for your unique soul, spirit, whatever you want to call it, whatever I was when I was up there. Because I remember when I was talking to these two people, I could see them. They were beautiful. But I don't remember seeing my body. Not saying I didn't have one. I don't know. I just don't remember looking at it. I felt that just wave of goodbye, I love you type thing. Is the best way I could describe it. I'll see you again. Just know you're loved is what I felt. And that's when, boom, I'm back above my body, watching them do part of this brain surgery. And those horrible feelings that I had felt before, again, when I was watching my body above the ambulance, they all came back, and it was terrifying. That feeling that I'm trying to describe, it was horrible above my body, watching them work on me doing my brain surgery. You know, is a kind of gnarly thing to see. And I know your listeners don't have, the pictures available like some of the other podcasts, but yeah, my head was split from front to back, down around my ear. They had to put stunts in my head to drain fluid and all this stuff. And I'm watching some of this, and I didn't feel physical pain, none of that, but I would have rather felt the physical pain than the emotional, almost anguish that I was going through watching this. And it got to a point where I almost couldn't take it anymore. Like, it was, oh man, it's very hard to describe.
So you were watching the surgery, but then did you just suddenly instantly go back to your body, or did something else happen to bring you back?
No. So what was really cool is I got to a point above my body, seeing part of that brain surgery, you can imagine. And I got to a point where I thought I was literally just, I don't know how to describe it other than explode from the emotions I was feeling, the horrible emotions that I felt again back above my body. And seeing that was it wasn't almost, it was too much for me to take at that moment. And when that happened, I heard that young lady's voice that had met me wherever I was. I just heard her say, Landon, it's time. Landon, it's time. It's hard for me to describe how time works too up there, because there was a lot of stuff going on with my family down here, rushing to the hospital and everything while I'm up wherever. But I heard her voice say, Landon, it's time. And I saw these just black wispy things go away from my body. So at this point, when she said Landon, it's time, I didn't see the surgery anymore. I just was right above my body that was in the hospital bed. And she said, Landon, it's time. And I don't know what that means necessarily, but that's what was said to me. And she repeated it twice. And I saw these dark, wispy things again. Like I saw behind that dumpster eating that pizza, I saw them flee away from me again. And anybody's welcome to interpret whatever those dark wispy things are. I don't know, but I saw them again flee when I was coming, I guess you could say, coming back into my body, because I was above it again. I could see it, and I saw them flee. And one thing I want to mention about that I think is really cool, is that when I got out of that surgery, I guess because I was in it is a couple days later, because I was in I don't know how you describe it, like a mini coma, or they had to have me so sedated because my brain was my head was so injured. But I saw those things flee away when she said it's time. And the first thing I asked for, that I don't remember before I was still in my body, it's hard to describe, was I asked my wife to please call my father and get me a priesthood blessing. And what that is in the LDS church, because I am LDS, and a priesthood blessing is I believe is what made those dark, wispy things that were almost holding holding me above my body in that horrible state that I was in. They just fled away. And when I look back at the timeline, because like I said, a lot of this is that I'm telling you, other than my personal experience wherever I was down here on Earth, where my body was, that I'm telling you is it was told to me. So the timeline's kind of weird for me also, trying to put these things together. But my Father gave me that blessing, and I believe that is what made those dark, wispy things flee. And they were almost holding. It's like they were keeping me in that state above my body. And I just remember seeing them flee and like coming to with my family above me. And that's it's hard for me to describe, because like I said, I did ask for a priesthood blessing, but I don't remember any of that. I still was in whatever place I was in, almost, I feel like. But so yeah, she said, Landon, it's time. And I came back to my body, and I saw those things flee, and I started again to feel physical pain from my injuries. And what's weird is that when I talk about these things, it's very paranormal, and it's also very spiritual. But paranormal things can manifest. I don't know how to describe it. Like it's almost like poltergeists and ghosts and stuff. It's weird how there's different paranormal things that manifest. But I saw these black wispy things fly away, and I believe they were keeping me above my body.
I wanted to ask you, so you saw the ambulance stuff happening and you saw the surgery. Have you talked to any of the people there involved and said, I saw you do these things? And they said, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. I'm glad you're asking questions, because that's a part I did leave out. I saw that. I've never heard of someone having to drill into a knee bone or whatever and put a needle in there. I've never knew that was a thing in my life, but it happened to me. And I remember them doing that when I saw that. And I remember asking, my wife and other people, I was like, what were they doing on my knee right there? What were they doing on my knee? And it was some of the nurses, questioned, like, what, you were flatlined when that was happening, and you were on the way to the hospital. I mean, I was dead. I flatlined. And so I questioned that, and that made a couple of people think, like, okay, well, that's kind of strange how he could bring that up without actually seeing, because I shouldn't have been able to see it, yet I was able to tell some of these people some of the stuff that happened. And that was an incredible validation to the stuff that I went through to try to explain to people, because that just validates what I experienced was real, and what I was seeing was real. I was not just in a state of, some people have told me, you had a brain injury, you just had a rush of this or this, and so that's not real. You were just your experience wasn't real. I'm telling you, Simon, my experience was real. And for your question there, I did see that, and I questioned it, and it made some people question, like, wow, that's that's an intense thing, because I hear it's one of the most painful things you can get done, is that drill into a bone. And luckily I didn't have to experience that physical pain at that moment. But yes, I did see it, and I questioned about it. And so that was cool to have that kind of validated, you know what I mean? From seeing something and having someone be like, wow, how did you, it was a very cool feeling.
And did you talk to anybody in the operating theatre about what they were doing? I mean, afterwards, say, I saw you doing this to my head or something.
So, no, I didn't. Not the head thing that I can remember. I just specifically remember that drill or that needle in my knee. And so that's the biggest thing I remember that didn't make sense to me. One other validation, Simon, is that lady when they talked to me up there, and I didn't mean to leave this part out because it was very important to me, but they were showing me things from my past that no one could have known. And like I said, it was not in a judgmental way. It was them trying to express how much help we can have on this earth if we ask for it. But they, her and him, conveyed to me two things. They conveyed a lot more than two, but two very important things to me, to kind of watch out for type thing. You know, kind of almost like they conveyed like a fork in the road for me at certain points. You know, you have a choice. You always have a choice, but be careful if this thing happens and you make this choice. And they showed me two of those things, and that one of those things has come true, and I made the wrong choice on it, and I regret it. But it was very validating still to know that I was told that, and then to see it actually come to fruition in my life. Even if they warned me and I still made the wrong choice, but that was also so cool and validating to myself to know that was not just a brain injury thing. I was speaking with those two people, and they the one thing they showed me has happened. The second thing has not, and I believe it will happen, and I believe I will. I know I will make the right choice on this one. I know a lot of people want proof and scientific knowledge, but what I can tell you is that scientific knowledge does not yield spiritual truth. Scientific knowledge is awesome. It helps us, but it does not yield spiritual truth. And so it's hard for me to describe these things to people in a scientific way, because it didn't happen to me that way. It was a spiritual experience.
You were a drug addict before this happened. And I was wondering if this could have been like a spiritual intervention, like the spirit world were looking down on you and thinking, we need to do something about this. And so that's how your near-death experience came about.
Yes, Simon, that is actually you explained it better than I've been able to yet, right there. So I'm gonna copy and paste what you just said, because that was a pretty good way of putting it. You know, like I have a purpose on this earth that I couldn't see myself. I felt worthless. I felt abandoned. I felt, what is the purpose of my life on this earth? And thank goodness that my loved ones, and it was a spiritual intervention in a horrible way, but that's how God works. God can make the worst moments in your life, he can turn them into your greatest strengths. In that accident was one of the worst accidents I've ever had in my life. I hope it's the last, because I'm very prone to accidents. It sucks, but it happened for a reason. Yes. I believe if that didn't happen to me at that time, I wouldn't be here with you now. I would be dead. It saved my life, Simon, but I'll tell you this, even after that experience and everything that I had, my personal experience with all that and all that knowledge and everything that I gained from that, I'll tell you, I still went back to drugs for a few years later. I'm just about 2 years clean now, but even after that experience, I could still go back to drugs. That's how powerful the good and evil forces are in this world. Because some people might say, how can you have that experience? And seriously, you'll go back to, you would do the same thing that they, were telling you about and what killed you? How could you do that? And my only answer to that is that addiction is very hard. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate with me. That addiction is not it doesn't care who you are, when you are, where you are. It can come for you. And by addiction, I mean the dark forces in this world. And I would hope that people pray every day.
But you're clean now, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah, yes. Almost 2 years.
Excellent. So have you talked to people in the church about your near-death experience? Was there any good feedback or bad feedback?
That's one thing that terrified me, even sharing with my family. Like I said, I just recently shared with them, and there's still a lot more that I haven't shared with anybody. And that's why I pray at the beginning of these, because I don't have a set format for when I talk to people about my experience. But when I share it, the people that need to hear it are going to hear what they need to hear. And so that's why I feel like that's why I go off track sometimes on different things, just like right now. Again, the people are going to hear what they need to hear. But my church, people in my church, it does not go against our church beliefs at all, what I experienced. On the contrary, it goes with my LDS beliefs. And so when I've shared it with, I haven't shared it with a lot of people. But I shared it with a missionary girl, and I shared it with her because she told me that she was walking around the church or around the temple in St. George, Utah one day, and she had this overwhelming feeling that she needed to talk to me, and these they were helping me at the time, trying to, they knew I was struggling and stuff, trying to get me to come to church things. But she said, Landon, I just couldn't get this thought out of my head that you have something that you need to share with people. And so I sat there for a second, and what's cool is the night before I prayed about it, I said, God, please, I have this experience and it's almost eating me alive, that I can't, like, how do I share this with people and not sound crazy? What do I do? And she just told me that the next day. One of our first presidency, Elder Holland from the LDS Church, he spoke about a near-death experience in one of the last conferences we had. His wife died from COVID, and he died from COVID. He had a near-death experience, and he also shares it at our church world conference, and you can watch that too. Elder Holland, his near-death experience, and so it goes right in line with mine. And so my church, I am not shared to share my experience with anybody in my church. Definitely not.
Well, last thing I'd like to ask you, is it true that you grew up in a haunted house?
Oh, that's right. You want to get into some of that? All right. Yeah. All right. We can. My mom's standing next to me here, and she just folded her arms, and she's like, got a smile on her face because she experienced it too. But yes, I grew up in a very haunted house, and there was. I haven't even explained all of it to my family necessarily, but they knew it because I would have these fright mares, and I'm the youngest of 8, and I would have what they call fright mares, and it's where you're still awake, screaming and running around terrified, but technically you're asleep type thing. And so they call them fright mares. And I remember when I would go to my room, some nights, all of a sudden, I would feel it. Just now that it pops in my head, kind of like how I felt the lovely presence of those people when I was up where I was before I saw them, the man and woman, how I felt them before, and it was a good feeling. This one, I knew when this thing was in the corner of my room because I could feel it, and it would terrify me. And if I wasn't paralyzed, because sometimes it would paralyze me and I couldn't move. Other times I could move, and how do I describe it? It looked as if you took a 7-foot tall basketball player and put a big black cloak on him. And I know that's the best way I can describe it. And what's crazy is my room was dark. I had no lights in it, but this thing was darker. And that's hard to describe. Like, how do you describe someone what's darker than dark. I don't know, but this thing was, um, and I grew up in this house with these things messing with me a lot. And at first, my family, it didn't affect them because, like I said, there was like 7 of us living in that house, and I was the youngest of 8, or there's 6 of us at the time. I can't remember, but I was the youngest of 8, and it was messing with me all the time. And it wasn't just this one big cloaked looking thing. There was another one that looked like how do I describe it? It was like a black almost like if you were to release some type of moisture in the air. It was almost looked like a black moisture ball. I'm sorry, it's so hard to describe, but it looked like a gas cloud type thing.
Right.
And they would, I don't know what that one was, because the other thing was a big 7 foot tall. I mean, its head almost touched the ceiling when it would be, and those were very real. And that, I don't know how to describe it, but I saw them, and I started complaining to my family and parents at first about it because it was terrifying. I didn't know what to think of it. And I remember my mom telling me, because she had experiences in her old house in Wyoming. Same kind of type of thing. Who knows? Maybe they just followed us here. Maybe they're state hopping and following us. But I can tell you that she told me that, Landon, if you invoke the name of Jesus Christ and just say, Jesus Christ, please help me. And I'm young. I didn't understand, it's okay, Jesus Christ, whatever. Not necessarily. I didn't understand the power of it like I do now. But this one night, I remember I could feel it standing in the corner of my room, and I did not want to look over there because I'm getting chills now talking about it. Still the feeling that it would give. And it floated, not walked. It like floated kind of over to my bed, and then at the waist, bent down. And I could hear this like, I don't know how to describe it. It was a horrible noise. And I just remember in my mind the thought that my mom had told me that in the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to leave. And I didn't even say it out loud. I just thought it. And next thing you know, this huge thing that was hovering over me, whatever it was, it almost screamed. It was gnarly. This screech sound, and it took off just by thinking that. And so that, in a way, as a young child, kind of solidified at least that, okay, there's something about Jesus Christ way that is better than whatever is messing with me right now, because they want to flee when I say that name, and that's the only thing that ever worked for me. And yes, it was haunted. It was like poltergeist type thing and ghosts. But it started after that night when I said that, and it fled out of my bedroom. It started messing with the rest of my family too. Like my other family members have some gnarly experiences. And I actually ended up sleeping in my parents' room on their floor for a year. After that. For real, I made a bed next to my mom's side of the bed for a year because I was so terrified. Like, and it was different types. It was, like I said, there was that big cloak thing, there was a gas thing, and then there was this. Oh, this one's hard. I haven't shared this one before, but those frightmares, that I would have. I remember. I don't remember anything that was going on physically, but I remember this just evil looking lady. And it's almost like the movies describe it. If you've ever seen the movie The Ring, where the girl's face is just covered in hair and just that, I don't know how to describe it other than that, but that's kind of what it was like. And I believe whatever that was is what would give me frightmares, and then whatever the black cloak thing is what would give me sleep paralysis. And I don't know how to explain that. That's just, I would have sleep paralysis from the big black cloak thing, and then that evil looking and feeling woman thing is what would give me frightmares, where I would run around the house screaming and crying. but still be asleep. And, it's pretty gnarly. And so, yeah. And so my house is very, very, very haunted. Yes. Yeah. The spiritual realm is real. And that's why I try to tell people, like, if, if you believe that there are bad entities in this world, then why would you not believe that prayer is a real thing from good entities? Like, you can see it. There is good and bad in this world, and we all have a choice, and we are on this earth to make those choices if we're gonna do good or do bad. And I've turned my life around now, and I was lucky. And I say lucky, but I paid for the near death experience. I'll tell you what, I paid a lot for it because I got a bad brain injury and all that stuff, brain surgery. But I feel grateful to know that prayer is real and that we can have it to use against these dark forces, even in houses. Like I said, I didn't understand before when that dark thing would mess with me, that just the name of Jesus Christ invoked could make it flee, but it did. And it didn't flee forever. It started messing with the rest of my family. But that night when I said that, I remember it doing this scream type sound and just bolted out of the bedroom. And so that's weird. That's a weird one to try to share with people, especially again, that lady that I would see in my frightmares. If any of your listeners have had frightmares, then they'll understand what I'm talking about. And if any of your listeners have had some paranormal stuff in their life, they'll understand what I'm talking about. That it's not crazy, but it is hard to describe some of the situations that occur with these things. And yes, my house was very haunted as a child. Luckily, the house I live in now, I'm good to go. Terrible accident, like you said, a good thing might have come from it. Like, was it almost like an intervention to save me type thing? And I believe it was. And now I see auras around some people. And I don't know how to describe it. It's not all the time. It's actually very rare that I see auras around people and at certain times. Like I can tell you right now, for family members, my sister-in-law was over here the other day, and we were just talking about stuff, and I started to see this like purplish pink aura around her, and it was tripping me out. I was like, whoa. I was like, what's, and I started kind of shake my head and walked away, making sure my eyes weren't playing tricks again. And so I walked back in the room again, and there it was, sure enough, just fit her body perfectly. And I told her about it. And she's one of the first people that I've ever talked to when I saw an aura and asked to try to explain why I'm seeing an aura around this person at this time. And wouldn't you know it, she started talking about some of these experiences that she had as a child and some tough stuff that she's going through. And so I try to think of why, if you call it a blessing, am I now blessed to sometimes see auras around people, and what does it mean? I have premonitions, I guess you would say. I get kind of a foresight into things, and I believe everybody is born with certain spiritual gifts, and we all have different spiritual gifts, and I didn't necessarily have these gifts I'm explaining to you until after my accident, I don't believe. But I have them very often, and I still, every day when I question myself about things that come into my head, and all of a sudden these things will happen, type thing. People call it psychic. I don't like to call it that. It's cool that after this incident that should have been life ending, I should have been a vegetable. They didn't think I was going to live past 24 hours. It's cool to know that something amazing came from something so bad. And that's what's so cool about our Creator.
Well, we've run out of time. It's been great talking to you.
Oh, shoot. Well, I love it. I'll end on that. That's great.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thanks again for coming on the podcast.
You are so welcome, Simon. I appreciate you. And to your listeners, I would just say one last thing. families can be together forever. Your family members are still, they're in a good place if they're not here, and you will see them again. And prayer is real. Use the power of prayer. And I'll end it on that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Simon. I appreciate you.
And that was an interview with Landon Dennis about his near-death experience. A great way to support the podcast is to join Patreon. When you subscribe for $6 a month, you get an extended episode every week. And for $3 a month, you get an extended episode every month. And you can now sign up for a 7-day free trial. The Patreon episodes are ad-free and are released 2 days before the free versions. You can become a patron by going to patreon.com/ourparanormalafterlife. Or click on the Patreon button on my homepage at pastliveshypnosis.co.uk. The links are in the show notes. And please look out for the Our Paranormal Afterlife episodes called Paranormal Stories, and they're released every week. And if you enjoy the podcast, please leave a review and be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or via your favourite podcast app to make sure that you don't miss out on any episodes. And thanks for listening.